Good evening, everybody. This is Mohona here from iPleaders, and welcome to today's session with An Hour with LawSikho. Today, with us, we have Ms. Snigdha Pandey, who is a resources marketing associate with iPleaders. Prior to working with iPleaders, Snigdha has had an extensive 4-year work experience with Saregama India Limited, and today she's going to talk to us about her experience as a media in-house counsel. Welcome, Snigdha.
Hi, Mona. Thank you for having me on the show. I have been on the other side of the panel before, so this is a bit different from me now. I hope the viewers enjoy the show and gain some insights and information as they need.
Welcome, Snigdha. All right, so why don't we begin with knowing about you? Why don't you tell our viewers about your background, which law school you graduated from, your journey from your law school till iPleaders? Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so basically, I graduated from Symbiosis Law School, Pune in 2013. Thereafter, I joined a small law firm in Kolkata called LP Agarwala. I was there for about 1 year doing litigation, and after that, I wanted to enter the corporate field and in-house work, do in-house work. So basically, I went on to intern with Shrey Infrastructure for about 4 months before getting an offer from Saregama, and I stayed with Saregama for about 4 years. And recently, I've moved to iPleaders, which has been an exciting adventure so far.
That's great. So, Snigdha, you mentioned that you immediately went on to do litigation right after your graduation from Symbiosis. So, why don't you tell us about what exactly prompted you towards litigation, and uh, what made you change from litigation to law firm?
So basically, I am a first generation lawyer. Since high school, I wanted to be a litigation advocate and practice in courts. So it always held that charm for me for a very long time. I interned extensively with lawyers in High Court and Supreme Court through my college. So the litigation was the obvious choice when I graduated. But the struggles of litigation is a bit difficult to overcome. Therefore, I made the conscious choice of moving in-house as soon as I possibly could.
In fact, Snigdha, I would agree with you. I'm myself a first generation lawyer, and I've been litigated for the first 1.5 years of my career. And definitely, financially, it is quite a struggle. There is no doubt about that. So, Snigdha, why don't you tell us about uh, what exactly did you learn, in your 1 year of litigation, and why did that help you in your job, in getting your job as an in-house counsel, or was it the internship that you did with Srey, as you said? Could you throw some light on that?
So in 1 year of my litigation career, it was initially a lot of learning experience, like a lot of reading up, researching, and extensively briefing the counsel and attending the conferences. I learned a bit of drafting, application and petition as much as I could, uh, and notices as it came along. But eventually, I realized that this is not something that I see myself doing in the next 5 years. So I realized that the best way to go forward would be through corporate in-house work. But I didn't do any much corporate internships prior to that during my college years. So what I thought I'd intern with Shrey, I may send an application. So when it got through, I had an extensive and career internship over there for about 4 months. Like in those 4 months, I learned more than I did learn in my first year of a law career. So I'm really grateful for that experience. In fact, that prompted me to the Saregama gig in the sense one of the lawyers I was interacting with during while managing the IP portfolio for Shrey saw my work and he was impressed with it. So basically, he told me about a vacancy that he has heard about in Saregama. He said, if you're interested, why don't you apply? So I thought, why not? This was my lucky break, because after that I got through one of the most interesting and fun time I had so far in my career.
That's great. So tell us something. Did you were you always interested in media, in-house work or media laws as such, or was it just because you got an opportunity to work with a media company? So how did that pan out?
Basically, I did a media law course in one of the semesters in college long back, which I barely remember now, to be honest. But that particular course and the conferences and the practical training which was offered at but that particular juncture stayed with me, I believe, because it prompted me to take up my solo corporate internship with a copyright firm in Pune, and that was quite interesting. Like, I learned some cyber forensic work. I had to research on copyright laws. So though it was not a very long internship, it did give me enough information to formulate into my interviews when it came to Saregama. So that really did help me. That brief period of knowledge for media law in college as well as the internship.
All right. So, since you've spoken about the interview, what exactly, if you could take us through the sort of questions, the rounds that might have taken during the interview for Saregama. So, what exactly were the kind of questions that they asked you? What were they looking for? What could you gauge? And what do you think was it that, stood out amongst the other people that may have applied for the job?
So personally, I always think that I interview badly. So I was very nervous before the interview. There were two rounds of interview with Saregama. The first round being held by the legal head at the time. He basically asked me questions really pertaining to my CV and what I had done. He was mostly interested in the copyright work that I did back in college and my media law course. But he asked me questions pertaining to the applications and the drafting skills I possess due to my litigation stint. So I think after that, I had the second round with the CFO of the company, wherein he asked me a few technical questions. So had prepared a bit beforehand, and what I think stood out was like, I read up on one of the recent case laws in news, and there was some interpretation which had not worked in their favor before. So I simply tried thinking out of the box and came up with an interpretation of my own, which, although may not have been 100% solid interpretation, but it definitely made me stand out from the other people as a problem solver or a troubleshooter. So I think that did help me, along with my skills. Basically, thinking a bit out of the box usually helps.
All right. I think that is something I believe which is really great. I mean, for an in-house lawyer, even I do believe that thinking out of the box is quite important and quite necessary, because a lot of times what generally happens is that I mean, as in-house lawyers, I believe there are a lot of times when lawyers do get stuck with balancing between the business side of it as well as the legal side of it, and to keep the business in mind becomes a struggle, because we are essentially trained to be lawyers and not businessmen. So I do believe that thinking out of the box must definitely be a standout skill for that matter. So why don't you tell us about maybe in your from your 4 years of work experience, firstly, what kind of work did you do as a media in-house counsel? What was the exact kind of work that was given to you? Why don't you throw some light on that?
So basically, when I joined, there was a revamp going, and they were trying to hire people in their in-house litigation team. So what I did initially was mostly in-house litigation, like say, drafting notices, giving copyright strikes on multiple forums, and doing the filing the cases for the on behalf of the company. So that was extensive. Over the years, it developed into some contract drafting work, which came for licensing and assignment of assets and copyright work. So that was pretty much it. Apart from that, we used to get a lot of queries from different departments asking for basically a green signal before they proceed to do something, like probably launch a product or probably sell a product to some other party. So in that cases, mostly queries and queries, contract drafting, and in-house litigation was the focus of my job.
Would you say your litigation experience helped you with working, with doing in-house lit matters at all? Like, did you have an edge over the others in your team? Would you say that?
I won't know about the edge over other team members because they were much senior to me. I was a first year graduate, pretty much. But it did help me because looking at a bit of the application petition which we had to file, an in-house counsel has to oversee that and, if required, makes the necessary changes on behalf of the company. So rather than being totally clueless about what should go into a particular draft, I was able to analyze it and make it a bit stronger. So I think that definitely helped me, the litigation experience.
That's great. In fact, here I would like to add something. So, while my 1.5 years in litigation, there were multiple companies, in-house counsels that I had to deal with on a daily basis. And although, like, it was just 1.5 years since I graduated law school, I was with a firm that Parekh and Company in New Delhi that allowed first years and second year law graduates, lawyers for that matter, associates, to deal with clients one on one, irrespective of how huge the client was. And there was something that, I mean, without naming any of the clients, but there was something that I continuously noticed with the in-house counsels of some of the in-house counsels, I would rather say, uh, of these companies, wherein small things that we learn within the first week of litigation, such as let's say filing a wakalatnama, whether a power of attorney is required, whether a of representation required from the company, a board resolution required from the company. All of these things we learn within the first one, maximum 2 weeks of litigation, especially when you're filing cases. And we had to explain these things to the lawyers, to the in-house lawyers, because they themselves did not know. They were wondering, like, what exactly, like, why would a specific power of attorney be required? A general one will not work. Why do you require a board resolution? So, in fact, even from very minute things such as stamping the wakalatnama to the affidavits, the applications of the petitions being filed. I mean, we had to guide them through that. So I just presume that maybe, I mean, looking from an outside counsel point of view, in all probability, I do believe that in-house counsels probably need to know a little bit of litigation, if not all of it, and probably it genuinely does help. So let's focus on the fact that you told me that you did not do any internships in companies, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So, since you did not do any internships with companies, did you see that? Did you feel, or was there any point in time during your 4 years with Saregama where you felt that there were that you were lagging behind, or there was something that you could have known had you interned? Like, was this a feeling that you came across any point in time? I mean, my same, if I had to ask this directly, I would ask, do you think interning is going to be a plus point for students who eventually want to go in-house?
Yes, definitely. In-house, even if you want to join a law firm, it always helps to have the experience because we don't learn much in law schools as much as we learn while doing the job. So in my case, I had to struggle a bit, actually quite a lot, before gaining some knowledge about the product about which we are selling and understanding that you need to understand not only law but the business aspects as well, which was quite difficult for me because I'm a hardcore law person. So I never knew that this aspect is so important to me. Would be because as I used to get irritated with sales and marketing teams asking me queries constantly before doing something, which now when I see look back at it, it makes sense because I am as an in-house counsel, I was supposed to know and guide them through all the departments as much as possible. So I think to answer your question, internships help to understand how the business function. Like in my Shrey internship, I was expecting a job right after interning after 4 months. But my mentor then explained to me that you are still not trained and a lot of training would be required. Like you need to extend it for another 6 months before we can consider you into the team. Since I didn't have that luxury at that time, so and Saregama happened, so that was not a problem. But I think that means that even an intern, they need to intern extensively with the company just to understand how the business functions. It is really helpful.
All right. I think that definitely brings me to my next question. So, I believe interning is absolutely necessary, and in fact, while I was in law school, if I may, I did about 5 of my 8 internships were in house, and 2 of them were with media companies and 2 of them were with FMCGs. So, with, of course, the aim of going ahead and moving in house eventually post law school. So, during these internships, there was while applying for these internships, there was a major problem I faced personally, which was finding out who to apply to. I mean, if you look at, if you can compare the exact same scenario to law firms today, they're very much visible online. There are people on LinkedIn. There are, associates, managing partners with their email IDs available on the websites. They're very easily accessible. But if let's say, you know, if a student wants to go ahead and apply for internships in media companies or any company for that matter, how does one go about it? Because it's extremely difficult, and with no offense, everybody, almost everybody, 90% of the people go ahead and tell us, why don't you go check the career page or the contact us page? But let's be brutally honest here. If we go ahead and apply to the email address given on the career page or the contact us page, how many applications, not just internships in general, how many emails would these particular abc at xyz.com may be getting? Like, for example, let's take Star India. If you go ahead and you apply to their on the contact us page, I'm sure it's not just an HR's email ID, but it's a general office email ID where they must be getting thousands and thousands of mails every day. So whoever is checking those emails might just, practically it's very much possible that they just may skip one slight, email for an internship. So how does one student, any student for that matter, whether he or she is in the first year or fifth year, how does one student go ahead and apply for internships in these media companies specifically, and otherwise to in-house, legal teams?
Yeah, to answer that question, I honestly don't know, because when I was trying to apply for such internship, as you rightly said, I used to go to the career page or the contact pages and apply, and I mostly didn't hear back from them. I was pretty sure that I'm lost in that particular crowd of thousands of email that they do get. So, but once I got to the company and I started working, I realized that the best way to go forward would be to contact the HR directly. Now, how can you find the HR? Just simply go on LinkedIn, figure it out. Even today, someone wanted to know if there is a vacancy in a particular place. I said, just contact so and so person, find them on LinkedIn, add them, and inquire about it. That is the fastest way that I know something will convert, rather than going aimlessly and sharing. Usually, the office ID is available on the contact page, so you will be sharing it aimlessly to the such IDs. So the best way would be to do some cold calls. Try calling up the HR, talking to them if there is an internship opportunity or program available or not, and then going forward with it. You may have to call 10 places to get one option, but I think if you do persist, it pays off eventually.
All right. So basically, everybody who's watching and anybody who watches us later, go ahead and use LinkedIn as max as possible. Also, Snigdha, do you think? Right now you've been writing articles, if I'm not wrong. and you've been writing one article daily, right? So while you do research and you write all these articles on a daily basis, do you feel that there is some amount of visibility that you gain by writing articles, or is that another way that law students could benefit from? Do you think that is correct to say?
Yes, I sadly found my writing skill being showcased properly at a much later stage in life. If only I had known this in college, it would have given me a lot more opportunities, I believe. Because since I've started writing, many people have reached out to me. I got calls for interviews and stuff like that from different media houses as well. So it gave me opportunities which I didn't know. Writing is a very important skill for students out there, and if you can just narrow down the particular field that you are interested in and write about it, that would give you a strong footing than compared to if you did not, because it simply shows your interest in the domain as well as what knowledge you have. So that is the best way to showcase your talent. Like, you can't go no, door to door and say that I am so good at something. The best way would be a written proof of it. So that is the good way to go forward. If you write more, your visibility will definitely be much higher.
Great. Also, Snigdha, let's now move on to speaking about basically just media laws and your, whatever you could garner from your 4 years of experience. 4 years is a very long time with any organization. So, why don't you tell us what made you stick with this organization for 4 long years? What was it that kept you going? And was it the work? Was it the money? Was it just being in the media space? What was it?
For me, basically, the work has to be interesting to keep me engaged. So for 4 years, let's say Saregama kept me engaged well enough. It has a lot of verticals that they work on, like they have YouTube, apps, website, then they have launch products like Udly Films, and then Karma. So the work keeps on getting interesting. Like, I was lucky to join the company when the reins were changed from to the new and handed over to the new MD, who brought about a revolutionizing change. Like, the stocks raised and everything. Like, the best time the company's had in a very long time. So I'm grateful to be a part of that particular journey. So that did help a lot. It helped me to understand the industry more, and as uh, as an in-house counsel, you need to understand how does the business operate as much as you need to know the law. So for me, I think it took me a while to gauge the business aspect of it than I would have liked, but eventually I got a hang of it. So no worries.
That's great. And this kind of brings me to an article I read of yours a couple of days ago, which basically, I read about your journey immediately. After having graduated from law school, you had to help your mother with the business because of your father's demise. And you'd written about how partially handling your family business. Helped you understand the business aspects uh, of a company, and as compared to just being a pure lawyer and knowing what's right and what's wrong and advising the business, but you understood the business aspects as well. So could you tell us something about that, and could you tell us how it may have helped you during your time with Saregama in terms of understanding the business?
So basically, this happened around the same time. Like, I was in my first year with Saregama when this incident happened. So I had to pretty much handle two different kind of work at the same time, which was honestly quite taxing on me. But it was an immensely rich learning experience as well, because we have a like small partnership firm. So there were not so many legal issues prior to my father's demise, but soon after, there were creditors piling on from every corner. There were income tax issues. There was a partner who wanted out of the business. So there was a lot of let's say drama happening around all the time. So for me to be patient enough to actually understand what the business requires, like you have to keep the business running on one hand and take care of the problems on the other hand. That has to be that is a very useful technique even for a lawyer, because multiple things happen all this time. So what you need to learn is to be patient and to see clearly through what the business requires. So as a lawyer, I always thought that I'll be interested in the legal aspect of it, but as I started working and helping my mother out, I realized the business aspect needs a lot of attention as well. So in my Saregama gig, it helped me to understand what the other departments might be needing at a particular time and to address their queries as efficiently as I possibly could. Because even though my job is of a legal counsel, that does not mean that the other issues or queries which come up will not affect the company as a whole. So to be able to handle my legal position as well as take care of the other aspects of the business, my this particular incident did help me to do the balancing act as well as I could.
All right. So, Snigdha, why don't you tell us about, apart from the business, knowing the business aspect of, the law, or knowing the business or the industry in general, what other skills are essentially required for an in-house counsel working specifically in the media industry? What, you could name three, you could name five, you could name as per your experience. What are these skills that law the hiring managers or the HRs, or for that matter the head of legal, looks at while they take interviews? What are the skills that essentially in-house media companies, production houses, what are they looking at?
In my experience, they usually look at the typical aspects like the domain knowledge, whether you know the industry at all or not, because it is a difficult thing for a company to teach a particular individual. Like you can teach someone law probably, and someone can learn up contract drafting, but learning business on your own is a thing you'll do it on your own. No one can hold your hand and guide you through it as a process. So having the domain knowledge, like media is literally at your fingertips. You can Google the news that it will be available, and then you have newspaper which things keep coming up. I personally found sometimes the thing we a party we had to pursue from a newspaper instead of actually being told by my manager. Like we found out there's an infringement happening by news, literally. So that way you have to keep yourself updated as well. Keep an eye out and be aware what's happening around you. Develop your domain knowledge, and contract drafting is essential as anything. You must know how to draft a proper contract, because you will be negotiating it, and in future your assignment or licensing will depend on that. For instance, let's say if you have not we have to qualify territories in licensing and assignment agreement to showcase where the rights are available. So if you don't negotiate that properly, that could directly affect your revenue system. So for that reason, you need to be completely aware what your company needs and what is in their best interest. Apart from that, just I think simple awareness of the system. Like I learned how to do management database system and manage them, which I didn't know a lawyer needed to know beforehand. But I did have to learn that on the job. Like there's a hierarchy in the company which has to be informed all the time about what's going on. So you have to manage some certain databases to keep them updated as well. At times you have to hold workshops and seminars for the other teams to or write a white papers to inform them what they need to do or what changes they need to bring to their in their departments. So things like that helps you to basically stand out and do the job properly as well.
All right, Santap. You just mentioned about learning how to use data management systems on the job, right? So there must be a number of other things that you must have learned on the job apart from just the business. So considering, current law schools in India, very, very apparently, at least till the time that I graduated 2 years ago, did not teach media laws at all. It was not a subject. I mean, I believe till date it is not a mandatory subject, although the field is booming in India currently, especially not just with the uh, with the commission coming up with recommendations for a codified single media law, or to, to data privacy, to intermediary liabilities, all, with the Cambridge Analytica, with all of this coming into place, where how important do you think it is for students in this particular field to keep themselves updated with everything that is happening, and not just the law? Because yes, I believe news can, let Facebook, any nowadays everybody reads news on Facebook. I mean, everybody uses social media to read news these days. But apart from just reading the news, what are the other ways that students, current law students who are interested in the field of media law and who want to have a career, not just as an in-house counsel for that matter, but working with the law firm for that matter, dealing with technology, media and technology uh, teams and cases. What are the things that they could possibly, focus on?
Like you said, it's very essential for us to have a proper paper in college, not just an optional paper like I had, but a mandatory one at least. So there are courses available online which you one can take up to have a thorough knowledge of a particular field, like media law and IP. So I think that is one way to go. Basically, gain the theoretical knowledge in depth as much as you can. The second thing I would say would be training, so practical training. So as much as you can write about media law and intern with media law firms or companies, that will be helpful for the law students to gain the practical knowledge, because once you are in the field, if your learning takes 6 months to a year, then you're already lagging behind. So you need to, if you are really serious about it, you should start interning with these companies and firms much earlier, and progress gradually in that direction.
That is actually great advice, I would say. Since you spoke about interning with these media companies, could you name a few companies, media houses specifically, that law students could intern with, or who
Sare,
take?
yeah, Saregama sometimes take interns. It is based on the requirement. Then again, you can do, I think Star India takes interns. Uh, I think Bhansali Film Production House, I think they do it, and as well as Yashraj, they hire interns. But you have to go through the proper channels. Like you have to do the cold call and the hard work to actually get that internship. But if you persist enough, you should be able to get through one of these. References usually help, because these companies are looking for people who are genuinely interested in learning. So if you can't get those, then just I think write great papers and put it on your CV so that they cannot say no to you.
That is great. Are there any other law firms that you would be aware of who take interns on a regular basis, specifically media law firms or law firms with a technology, media, and telecom team?
Yes, I believe. I think there was an article I was reading a few days back about the top law firms in media. So I would suggest, if the students can just look it up on iPleaders blog, probably. So I think Nayak and Nayak, Sai Krishna, and Sai Krishna Associates. Then I think Lal and Shroff, I think they've disbanded. So uh, probably some other firm. Just look up all the firms. Just or just go through the article. That also helps. From the top of my head, Sai Krishna and Nayak and Nayak come. So and Anand and Thimani, they take interns. So you can try. The law students can definitely give it a shot and apply there.
I mean, I could add to the list myself. I believe DSK also has a media team, maybe small, but they do have it. And apart from that, there is Krishnamurti and Company, which is also known as K Law. I think they also take interns. I'm sure it's a law firm that deals with media, so they have. I mean, they have a media team. So they also take interns. Apart from that, I believe. There are so many other law firms that do have TMT teams, like Khaitan and Company does have a TMT team. I think they sit out of the Delhi office. And I was reading recently, there was a law firm called TMT Law, which was, I believe, the founder was Abhishek Malhotra, an alumnus of NLSIU Bangalore. And off late, I believe, little over 6 months ago, or somewhere around November, December last year, TMT merged with Bharucha and Partners. So, but Abhishek Malhotra still deals with media litigation. So that is another firm that has ongoing media litigation specifically. If students are interested in, so I just wanted to add a little bit of what I could help with. All right. So apart from these internships, why don't you tell us about the in-house companies specifically hiring first years, as in freshers who have graduated out of law school? So I come from ILS, where at least during the time that I have been there, we used to see multiple in-house companies come and hire. And I could name a few companies who've had campus placements from our college, like Wipro, Tech Mahindra, ICICI Bank, ICICI Prudential, um, I don't know, a number of other of them, but this is something that I can say offhand. These were companies that came and they hired not one but two to three in-house counsels. So while I was, and I've seen this happening over the years, I've seen it happening right from my first year. And in fact, at ILS, back when I was there between 2011 to 2016, the trend was that in-house companies would come and pick up final year law students or fourth year law students. And I thought that, as a law student with almost zero guidance and who comes across this, I genuinely thought that, oh, in-house companies do hire lawyers, and that two, three at one go. So it must genuinely be, they genuinely may require so many lawyers. And I saw that over a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But what I did not realize was that later on, of course, that that these companies have very small legal teams when you compare it with a law firm. Law firms hire lawyers because they need multiple lawyers and segmented teams. If it's a full service law firm, they will require lawyers not just for media. They will require lawyers for energy, oil and gas, the general corporate, private equity, M&A, banking and financial services. They just require lawyers because it's a law firm. But in companies, they probably have teams of 5 to 6 generally. And if it's the head office, probably you could expect the number to be double, or maybe somewhere around 20, 30 people at max in a team. And that too, the hierarchy differs. They are not all freshers, of course. The positions differ from executive to senior executive to assistant manager to legal manager to general manager, and so on and so forth. So when I noticed that, I believe to a certain extent I was misguided to the fact that law firms, that in-house legal teams actually recruit every year. But after I graduated, I realized that that's not true. So, what do you have to say about in-house companies hiring freshers? And here I would want you to speak about specifically media companies. Do they hire freshers, and are there specific media production houses that hire freshers and train them?
Um, that's actually a very good question. Usually, in my experience, it's no, they do not hire freshers as much. Probably Star does, as far as I know. But most of the media companies, they want experienced people on their team. The reason for that, I believe, is since I was a first year, I had worked just a year before getting my gig. The idea is that the late training period or learning curve is much more in case of a fresher. They not only have to be taught about the laws, they have to as well be taught about the business aspect, and it may take a long time to train them. And while training, there are a lot of people who cannot sustain and they want to drop out because the pace is slow and the training period extends so much. But for the company, from the company's point of view, it's simply investment of time and money for them. So rather than investing time and money in a fresher, they can hire the ones who are more experienced, probably from a law firm or another in-house company. So that makes sense from the company's perspective. But and usually the teams are, if a team of 10, I would say, is a large legal team for an in-house legal department. They usually restrict the number as well, because they rather have, it's like a quality over quantity thing. So they need to work on that. So for the law students out there, freshers in media companies are not absolutely zero. Some companies may hire them, I might not know about it, but mostly, like Saregama doesn't hire, Viacom doesn't do that, and some other companies, Balaji probably doesn't hire a fresher without any experience. So you could just gain some experience and exposure in through internships and probably working in law firms before applying for in-house in media companies.
I would really like to play devil's advocate over here, and I generally have a concern. So lawyers don't take, so in-house legal teams generally don't take up freshers or people with, let's say, 6 months, 1 year of work. They wouldn't, because they have to take certain tough calls when it comes to decision making with respect to business. It's understood, but like you said, they would prefer somebody else, working, a lawyer working with another in-house company, where, with experience from another in-house company. How does that work when most in-house companies, or media companies for that matter, do not hire freshers at all? Like, the only other option that I believe law students are left with is to go ahead and join an independent lawyer, or join a law firm and gain litigation experience, or join a law firm in a corporate team and gain certain experience there. But how exactly does that help them in knowing the business? Because ultimately what happens, I mean, from the little limited knowledge that I could gain, what ultimately would happen is that they would, let's say, if they're selected through the interview rounds, they would still have to understand the business, and it would still take them time to go ahead and understand how the industry functions, to gain requisite industry knowledge. Because I believe the amount of time that lawyers generally, first year, second year lawyers generally spend, whether be it in court, or whether be it in a litigation law firm, or in a law firm doing general corporate or any other practice for that matter, they don't have the time to keep themselves absolutely, abreast with the law. Because the working hours are crazy. I mean, let's be absolutely honest, the working hours are crazy. So don't you think it's counterproductive for in-house companies to be investing another 6 to 7 months, rather than training somebody for 6 to 7 months right from the beginning? And that person, I mean, a fresher could, yes, I mean, you'd have to handhold them up to a certain extent. But if you find the right ones, rather than having a mind block of the fact that, they're a fresher, they don't know anything about the law, which is probably very true. We are only taught where to find the law in law school, and not exactly taught what the law is, at least not in depth, or the practical application of it for that matter. But don't you think it is counterproductive in terms of the business knowledge that somebody who is hired right after law school would have in 1 or 2 years of working with the business? Not just being able to, take the right calls in maybe a year or 2 years, but understanding the business as well. Whereas somebody coming in from a law firm or from a litigation background with a separate set of skills, coming and learning how to, how the business functions, what are they required to do. And I genuinely want to know the answer to this, because I'm confused.
Yes, that is a very good question. In the sense, what can a person do to get into the in-house media company? Simple as that. From the company's point of view, training any individual, whether it's a fresher for 6 7 months or someone who's coming into the business after gaining some other experience, is slightly different, because there are multiple skill set required for an in-house counsel. So, for example, a fresher will have to be taught how to draft a contract, how to learn the business aspect of the business of the company, as well as other things which may be required, right? But in case of, let's say, an experienced lawyer who's they can probably work with a media firm or a media lawyer to gain the necessary experience, or even if they're working for, let's say, a litigation lawyer or a litigation law firm, they at least have, or a corporate firm for that matters, they have the basic experience of drafting applications or contract drafting and stuff like that. So this way, what they can do, the companies, they don't have to teach them three skills, they just have to teach them one, which is the business aspect. So the training for the company also gets reduced in this way. Even if they have to invest time and energy, they don't have to do it in all the platform, just they can focus on one. So I think that could be the reason that they don't want to do that.
That's a extremely interesting take on it, actually. But I mean, I still do believe that certain companies should start taking up, converting internships into PPOs. Yeah, which actually brings me on to the next question. So, while in law firms we very openly see a practice of law students going ahead and interning not just once but twice and sometimes even 3 to 4 times with a particular law firm, what happens is that eventually if they've performed well and if they've produced decent results and if they've impressed the partners and the principal associates, they are generally offered a PPO as the trend or the practice goes. But when if we look at companies, is this a practice that is prevalent, and if it isn't, then why?
I can only guess because, as I said, Shrey didn't hire me after 4 months internship, right? So they didn't offer me a PPO. Again, Saregama took me in after 1 year of experience only, in that too in a litigation. So I don't think so. There is some mantra or universal law here. It depends on company to company how the hiring practice works. What about the PPO? Probably the companies need to be sure that the person they're hiring on the team fits the bill, like any law firm would check for that. But a company, as you know, the training and the learning curve is much longer than a law firm probably has. So in that case, probably that's what the time takes. So if you are probably interning with a company, say 6 months or 7 months or probably a year, a longer internship that is, then the chances of you getting a PPO would be more. Or if you're interning multiple times, then a company for which you have worked only once for a few months, a month or two, because the company doesn't get to know you better or train you enough, as well as you don't learn it yourself. So I think the learning is a big factor over here.
All right, okay, I get that. So Snigdha, why don't you tell us about, as during your experience as an in-house media lawyer, was there, I mean, since we're so vastly talking about the learning curve and, the fact that knowing the business is very important, was there any one particular incident or a case or a transaction, anything, any experience of yours that changed the way you perceive media laws or the work as a in-house media lawyer? Was something that you may, it could be a victory, it could be, something that you failed at. So what exactly uh, changed your perception? Was there a point where you think that uh, you had reached that particular curve where you could go ahead and take decisions yourself?
There were actually 2 points like that. One was 7 days in my first in the job. So what basically happened? YouTube has a policy, like if you want to strike down a particular infringement, now you need to come up with a court order within 10 days. So while I joined after I think a week or so, I was told that I need to procure an order, a favorable one, to put up on YouTube so that we can stop the copyright infringement from being reinstated. So wow, basically that means that I had to find the lawyers, understand copyright law from scratch, and then file the case, brief the counsel, do everything within those 10 days, and get an order also. Now, as you know, our court system is a bit, it takes a while to get to the point, but in case of emergencies or exigencies, they do make an exception. So it was a huge task for us to find a judge who will at least listen to us and give us an order in our favor, probably. So that particular rush of, I think, 10 days to get start from the scratch, learn everything, Google policies and everything, and getting a favorable order, that was a standing. Unfortunately, I did. Similarly, in another experience, that was, I think, a year into the job, there was a particular case which I definitely thought we'll get a favorable order. But by the time the order came in, I realized that we had lost the particular case. We had to go for an appeal. So that particular incident which was there, these two incidents stood out for me, because once when I had no idea, I could go and get the job done. The other time when I was sure and confident that I can probably get it, this will happen, then it backfired. So these two moments stand out for that, those very reasons. Like, you never know what's going to happen in the industry.
And what exactly did you learn from these experiences?
Be always prepared for anything to come your way. You have to take swift decisions. And if things don't work out your way, you have to find the plan B, C, D, whatever works, to make sure that you get the results. Because management in a company are much different from law firms. They don't understand how the legal system usually works. So you don't have the option of saying, no, we can't get this done. You have to figure out a way and solve the problem at hand. So that's what I learned.
Okay, and what exactly happens, when you make a mistake? Let's say, because we understand that, a business is involved here, and one one mistake, let's say, whether it's in litigation or whether it's in a transaction or whether it's an advice, it's legal advisory. Let's say, not just copyright infringement, but let's say you find an ad which you feel is comparative disparagement for that matter. So, in such cases, when you need to advise the business, and especially as a first, second, third year into in-house media practice, what are the most common mistakes that people make, and what kind of repercussions do in-house counsels generally face? I'm really interested in knowing the answer to this.
Okay, so basically, in the first couple of years, no one takes you seriously. So that is a big drawback, because you have to interact with different teams at the same time, and they have to listen to your advice and take it carefully into account before taking the next step. So even if you're saying the right thing and the best advice possible, if the business team is not sure in your capability as a lawyer, that can surely backfire. Like in this particular case, which I was mentioning that we lost, it was simply because business was given a set of guidelines to follow, but they conducted an communication with the other party without taking the go ahead from the legal. This simple small mistake cost us the case in the long run. Like the person who did send out that email, they didn't know that it's a simple email. How difficult can a communication be? But when it came to disclosing the fact, we had to disclose it, and that did not work out in our favor. So repercussions can be multifold, and if you do make a mistake, obviously you have to listen to everyone involved, and there is a proper way of being told that get the job done. So even if you're told off and mistakes happen, just brush yourself and find another way to sort it out. That's the only way to go.
I'm actually quite surprised here. In fact, I have a small story of my own to say. So there was a particular case while I was working with Parik and Company that we were representing, which was going on for years, right from the State Commission to the NCDRC to the Supreme Court. And I joined the case while I was in Parik. I joined the case while it was at the NCDRC level. In fact, right before the final arguments to be made, and this was I mean, now that the order is out, this was the Surf Excel 10 by 10 case, and it was on misleading advertisements, and there were a group of people who had filed a case first in the State Commission, then with NCDRC, and what basically happened was that NCDRC in the review found the case in favor of our clients, and we went ahead and of course filed a caveat in the Supreme Court, because that is where they would probably go next, because the order was in our favor. And to our surprise, one of the bunch of 10 to 11 peer uh, of the opposite parties actually went ahead and filed a case in the Supreme Court. And I still remember, like, it was a huge deal back then for our client, and we used to get multiple number of calls, because a number of other petitions were pending before similar petitions were pending before the state commissions, before district commissions. I'm presuming before NCDRC as well. And an order from the Supreme Court would definitely mean a lot. And so we were briefing. I mean, we briefed. It's in public domain now, so we briefed Dr. Ashok Desai. He was the ex-ASG of India at a point in time for this particular matter, especially because he had a lot of knowledge on this particular field in law, which was, which would be MRTP and misleading advertisements and unfair practice, and we briefed him, and the case was the next day in the morning, and the councils had flown down. I mean, a bunch of the councils had flown down. The branch councils had flown down from Lucknow, from Chennai. Since the Supreme Court is in Delhi, the Delhi councils were also there, and this was a case that the clients were keeping tab on, because it was a huge deal for them internally, I believe. And when the matter was heard for admission, it was dismissed within 2 minutes, and it was a huge deal at that point in time. And eventually, I figured out that there was a huge party that Friday back in the client's office, saying that, oh wow, they've gone ahead and won the case. So I mean, the repercussions of something which is like a daily job for a litigation lawyer, such as representing your clients in a matter which is probably for a lot of litigation lawyers just another matter, is actually a huge deal, in terms of not just business, but in terms of wins also for in-house companies. I do believe that. Okay, Snigdha, I mean, we've just left with the last 2 minutes, so I'm going to take up a few questions from our live viewers. We have one question from Lavish Jain. He says, hi Snigdha, does in-house experience add towards bar law experience to be eligible for judiciary or other domains which require court experience?
I don't think so. It does count towards that, because you have to be a practicing advocate as far as my knowledge goes. So the answer would be no.
Okay, so for all the viewers watching right now, and for the ones who would watch later, I mean, I think we should make one thing very clear, that when you work as an in-house counsel, whether be it in a media company, an FMCG company, IT, banking, any company, you essentially go ahead and sign an employee agreement, wherein you once you sign it, you're an employee of the company. So therefore, as per the Advocates Act and the Bar Council of India rules, you are not eligible to go ahead and practice, at least during the time that you're an employee with the company. And this will work. This is the same for each and every company within India. If you're a lawyer and you have gone ahead and joined a company and signed a contract that very specifically says that you're an employee, you cannot practice, at least during that point in time. If you do at any point in time decide to leave your in-house job and then go ahead and want to practice law, as in litigate, do litigation work with an independent lawyer, work with a law firm that does litigation, then you would have to go ahead and enroll yourself with the state bar first, and then the bar, give the AID. Or in case you were practicing before and you were practicing before and you have now decided to go ahead and join an in-house practice and work with, I mean, in-house work as in the in-house legal team and work with a company, then at that point in time you turn into an employee and you are by law required to give go ahead and surrender your license to practice in the courts. And this is quite, I mean, I'm sure Singha would agree, this is quite clear as per the Advocates Act and as per the Council of India rules. All right, so Snigdha, I believe we have finished an hour. If you would, and I believe it was a very very enriching conversation, not just in terms of knowing about the media. The media companies, or how we could get internships, or how do media firms as well as companies take freshers, why not? I mean, there were a lot of unanswered questions answered today. But I mean, before you go, I have just one other question for you. Basically, um, so while we all know that media law is a very very niche sector in India, especially it's a growing sector. A lot of people don't even know that there's something called media laws, and they think that media laws is synonymous to intellectual property law, whereas if I were to say if I were to say what exactly media laws is, it's more or less an offspring of intellectual property laws. I mean, you need to know trademark, you need to know copyright, you need to know designs, you may need to know geographical indications and patents. But media laws is not like a codified bunch of laws. There are like media laws in itself has so many various facets to it: print media, electronic media, digital media, convergence. Then there is the broadcast media. There's films. There are various different sets of media, and then there are advertising laws which govern all of medias. So, what exactly where do you feel, in terms of the media laws in the country? Where do we stand right now, and what do you think needs to be improved in terms of the law? And what do you think any lawyer or law student who is interested in this particular field, what are the areas of law that they should know, like 100% know, and be abreast with, in order to make a career in this particular field? These are like two different set of questions. You can answer them separately.
I think you laid it down pretty well yourself, so I don't have much to add to it. The point is, yes, you'll have to do IT laws as well. There are intermediary liabilities over there covered. So the problem with the present law is it's too scattered, and I think there could be like a single legislation in place which could govern them as a whole, instead of just bifurcating them on the different kind of media or reinterpreting them in the existing laws. That could probably help. But right now, where we stand, we need to know all these laws that you just mentioned, and just trying to focus. If you like, for instance, are interested in say films probably, or music companies and stuff like that, then you have to emphasize more on copyright act. That comes more handy than, let's say, patents. But then again, if you're launching a product, so then patents, trademark, you need to consider them. So as a whole, IP is very extremely important, the basic working knowledge of it. Then you need to know, since we are entering the digital, we are already in the digital age. So IT Act plays a big role. You need to know that as well. And the upcoming case laws and the lawsuits which are being filed, like constitutional aspects of it. You need to know more or less bits and pieces of a lot of laws. So that should help narrow down things a little, I think, for the viewers. But then again, it's quite an extensive stretch for them to cover.
What about the radio, the laws governing the radio broadcast as well as print media? What about those particular laws? I mean, is there any particular, not any particular, but I do know that there are a vast number of laws that govern these sectors. But is there anything a lawyer specifically looking to work with a print publisher, like, let's say Bennett Coleman, which is the Times Group, or the Hindustan Times Group, or the Hindu, Economic Times. I mean, any of these. Sorry, Economic Times is a part of Times Group, but the Hindu or the Business Standard, any of these big publishing, newspapers or magazines, for that matter, if basically in the print media, what are the laws that you are required to know? And I'm very specifically asking in terms of in terms of just the media sector. I mean, I do know contract drafting is something that they need to know because they will have to draft contracts. Litigation is something that they should be abreast with, at least with a little bit of technicalities, if not all of it in total. Research is definitely important, it's a skill. But what exactly are the laws that, govern these particular sectors?
Print media, honestly, I am not very sure of because I work with broadcasting and digital media. So I don't think so. I will be qualified to answer that question to the fullest extent. But as you said, that there are laws governing each sector. So, like print media, I believe Constitution will play a great role. If I'm not wrong, we get the freedom of, I think, press. The I think Press Act or something like that. It should work. So I have limited knowledge on that, so I would leave that question as it is, and hope the viewers can Google it and find it out for themselves.
All right, Snigdha, it was in fact a pleasure to have you speak with us on the other side today on An Hour with LawSikho. And I mean, I've come on this particular side after about a month or two, so it was great hosting this show today as well with you. Before you go, would you like to have any parting message for law students as well as the young lawyers in this field, or anybody else who's very specifically interested in knowing about media laws?
Yes, I would tell them that media law needs a lot of good lawyers right now. It is an upcoming industry, so learn as much as you can about media law. Do online courses, study in college, find anything you can get your hands on. Just increase your theoretical knowledge, but at the same time, try to emphasize on something which will help you garner the practical knowledge as well. Internships, working through with the lawyers and all, whatever helps. Just gain as much knowledge as you can, and then join the industry. It's not that difficult. It takes a bit of struggle, I'm sure, but trust me, you will catch your lucky break as well. Just keep at it.
That is really, really good advice. I mean, someday I hope even I take it from you. But thank you so much, Snigdha, for joining us today and giving us your time. And we really hope to see you back again sometime very soon on maybe a different topic. And for every one of you who has watched us 8 minutes past 9, please do keep watching. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you do not miss An Hour with LawSikho. We have the hour every day between 8 to 9, every weekday between 8 to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays between 4 to 5 p.m. We have this entire week ahead of us, another 4 days, and we have some really, really exciting guests that are going to come and talk about various fields. In fact, tomorrow we have the panelist is going to speak about cracking the civil services exam, the UPSC, and I believe that will be a topic that a lot of law students, or in general the public, would be interested in. So do subscribe so that you do not miss any of the webcast that we do. And thank you very much for being with us, the few viewers that we still have for over an hour. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Good night.